Hi. Today I'm going to be reviewing this novel, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. And so this is part of my book review series, So Much Fandom. Unlike the other videos in this series, I am going to be minorly spoiling the plot of this novel, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. So you may want to avert your ears if you haven't read it yet and you want to be really surprised. So, first, some background about the circumstances under which I read this book. So, I took Brandon Sanderson's free online class in how to write fantasy novels, which is available on YouTube, or at least it was when I took it. And he talks a lot about Mistborn. So, I read this novel having taken his class and wanting to see how he put his principles into practice. And Brandon Sanderson talks a lot about his method of writing a fantasy novel and how he breaks it down into three stages. The promise at the beginning of the novel, which is where the author makes a promise to the reader. The progress, where the author makes progress in delivering on the promise, and then the payoff, where the author essentially keeps his promise to the reader, and that's the conclusion of the novel. And it's supposed to be a very satisfying experience that you were promised something and then the author delivered, and that's how he says you write a great fantasy novel. So interestingly, I'm going to be giving Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson a bad review. And for me, the issue is that in his class, Brandon Sanderson describes this novel as he promises a fantasy heist novel, and then he delivers on that, but then he over delivers. He delivers something extra that he didn't promise at the start, which is that at the end they defeat the evil empire, essentially. And for me, that's actually not what happened. For me, this novel promised a fantasy heist novel, but then it wasn't. In the end, it wasn't a fantasy heist novel. It was a let's defeat the evil empire novel. And so for me, that was actually a misalignment of the promise to the payoff. And so for me, somewhat ironically, Brandon Sanderson sort of contradicted himself under his own terms in terms of his method for how to write fantasy novels and then his own signature fantasy novel. So that's sort of the issue that I had with Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. And so for me personally, I was kind of sad when I read it. And so I decided that I would write a fantasy novel that was a fantasy heist novel that was just a fantasy heist novel and that didn't then develop into a let's defeat the evil empire novel. And that for me was my novel, The Crystal of Light, which is available on Amazon, and please take a look at it. And so I kind of really like the idea of fantasy heist novels. I just wish that this had been an actual fantasy heist novel, not a let's defeat the evil empire novel disguised as a fantasy heist novel. So that's kind of why I'm going to have to give this novel a bad review, and thank you for watching.